Internet, welcome to Legacy Conversations. I'm speaking to former Sergeant Major S.W. Fourie. He served in 1 Reconnaissance Commando, later 1 Reconnaissance Regiment. That is the parent regiment, I would say, of the South African Army Special Forces. He was there for 10 years, and this is episode 3. We are continuing with his first operations in Mozambique. SW, welcome back. Thank you for talking to us. We left it at your first patrol. Certainly, you suffered some losses there. You lost a black member, Portuguese man. Then you lost your commander, who was a very, very good soldier. Kokis was his name, the Toy. And now let's take it further. I suppose we can carry on after you the rendezvous with the helicopters who came to fetch Ballarat. Helicopters came to fetch Kokki's body. And you said the patrol then went on for another while. Yeah. You were not withdrawn.
Exactly. Because I think something we didn't indicate it is that we, or did we? We were deployed as D Escadron, SAS D Escadron.
Perhaps you can tell us about that. I think in the picture behind me, all of you are standing there, and interestingly enough, you're wearing Rhodesian Army camouflage, not South African. And when you were actually on operations in Mozambique, which is not Rhodesia, you were wearing a different type of uniform altogether. So perhaps you can explain to us the role of the Rhodesian SAS and the links to South African Special Forces.
Yeah, it was, of course, a very low profile. Nobody was supposed to know South African soldiers deploying in Rhodesia, then into Mozambique. So we were D Escadron, SAS D Escadron. ANB, I think, is England. Rhodesian soldiers were C Escadron, and we were D Escadron. So we were told to speak English from the moment we landed in Rhodesia. Well, that didn't work, I think. But we didn't mix with the civilians. They didn't see us only from a distance, because we land directly in Loretzi, Buffalo Ranch. So we weren't in town. So fortunately, because they would have picked up in our accent, we're not from Rhodesia. Okay. So yeah, it was from the government side. They didn't want anybody to know that South African soldiers are fighting with the Rhodesian soldiers. And specifically, it's not internal. We never fought internal. We were only external. Mozambique and Zambia. Okay, then we can carry on. We carried on after the death of Corporal Canal and the death of Kokkie de Toy. And now Willie Ward was the team leader. And then we had that specific contact after that. A week after that, we, I can't remember, I think it was MacIver's rucksack that was hit by a couple of bullets, and his water bottle was leaking. He thought he was bleeding, so yeah. And that's where I left the landmine on the ground, which did go off later on. We heard it. We were quite a distance away from there, because when the adrenaline is pumping, you walk, I would say you walk about 8 k's, 6 k's an hour. That is only to get away. But when you're actually walking tactically, you will walk slower. There was not a rush. You can't just wat in Afrikaans graspol in die hol. You have to, while you're walking, while you're walking, you have to observe what's going on around you. Be alert all the time. Just for interest's sake, our weapons were loaded. So there was a bullet up the barrel, but it wasn't safe. There's no way you can have it on, take it off safety. So within the first kilometer, you're going to have an accidental AD. There's just, the bush is just too thick. And then you will have a pistol as well. That would be part of your kidney pouch. But that wasn't loaded. It was just your AK-47 that was loaded, and that's it.
If I may ask you quickly, SW, forgive me for interrupting, but I had a question from a fellow asking us during our Afrikaans recordings. And if I haven't said this already, we're not native English speakers. Please forgive us if our E's and R's are not that good. The book will be perfect because my wife will edit it, but in English. But when you do a parachute jump, with that AK-47 or rifle for yours, would it be loaded? Magazine on or magazine off? How did you do it?
No, it wasn't loaded at all, and your magazine was off. So you would, the moment you hit the ground, the first thing you will do is you release your parachute and then grab your weapon, put the magazine on, and then cock it. So then it's loaded, and then immediately put it on safety. I remember some of the guys did have slings. I didn't have a sling on my AK-47. So I would carry the weapon resting in my left hand and my finger very close to the trigger or to the safety catch. Some guys would put a small piece of parachute cord around the safety catch so that they can immediately just pull it and start firing. And when we fire, it's not automatic fire. That would be silly because you only have 7 magazines. It would be deliberate 2 shots, tap on a specific target, and then you will move over to the next target. It's not a matter of emptying your magazine, because then you will be within 2 or 3 contacts, you're out of ammo.
Well, that's very interesting, the double tap which you described to me, because when I know our sponsor is something about it. He keeps on saying that if you start shooting automatic, you're not a professional. He actually looks down upon people who shoot like that. Of course, I would say in the first opening stages of an ambush, it might be necessary, but it's the entire point is to kill people. I mean, it's no use to shoot 500,000 rounds into the air and the guy's still running. If you can take him down with 2 bullets, and the double tap is the best way of doing it.
Yeah, and then, of course, we didn't sweep the killing area anymore, so you can't go and collect a magazine or 2. So we would, the moment we have a contact, we will pack up and we will go do a massive dog leg and then back, because we were working on a specific compass bearing. So at least HQ would know where we are.
You had no fear, SW, if I can ask you. I know that there were other patrols, special forces patrols in the area. Of course, you wouldn't know where they were, and they wouldn't know where you were, but headquarters would certainly know. But did you ever have the feeling or a fear that you would walk into your own patrols? And the firefighting ensues when that happens.
Yeah, if you look how small that group is, that photo there on top, that group will deploy simultaneously, but very far apart. And you have normally comms early in the morning and late in the afternoon, and then you will give your RV, you will tell what you've seen, and that way HQ start building up a picture what's going on in the area and where's the most activity. So when they withdraw you next time, you will be going back specifically where they identify there may be activities, either vehicles or patrols, because the moment they know that we were there, they send more and more and more patrols. You're getting more organized, and our tactics were just that much better than this, and specifically lying up in what we call it, a hiding place. That
yes, you have to be area where you would sleep for the night.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in that too, because And forgive me if I sound a little bit as if we know absolutely nothing, but there might be people here who really don't know much about South Africa or South African Special Forces. So I'm trying to make this as easy as possible for everyone. But when you go into this overnight area, you did tell me you would walk. The commanding, the team leader would see a spot which he thinks is perfect, and then he would keep on walking. So and then you come back. Right. You move like a dog back. You come back. You're about 300 meters to a bit more, I suppose, away from your original track. So you could actually keep an eye on your own tracks, and then you set up your claymores and all around the fence, and you're still not talking. For those who didn't listen to the previous ones, these people simply don't talk. You can actually stay quiet for months while you're outside, out in the bush. So just take me through this, Al. Let's say now you've come to this layover place. What do you do? What do you do before you even put on the claymores? I would just like to see the scenario where the commander, the team commander says, "Okay, boys, this is where we're gonna stay tonight." Obviously, you would know what to do.
Normally, if you move into your hideout place, you would immediately split into your body pairs. It's always two together, and then we would lie quiet for about half an hour, 45 minutes, just listening what's happening around us. And the worst sound you can hear is cattle. Sometimes they have like a bell around one of the cow's neck. And if you hear that sound, you know this is it. Because they walk all over the area. They know the area. And they may even pick up your tracks. So we were a couple of times where we were compromised by civilians. Once we caught one, it was early in the morning. We approached a kraal. Kraal is where they stay, like small little huts together. And we were approaching the kraal, and it must have been 5:30 in the morning. And one of the boys, he was a little bit older than a teenager, he came out to wee, and he walked right into us. So we grabbed him. We closed his mouth because he was trying to yell. And then I think it was Gert Ekstein, tied a rope, tied his hand, tied a rope to his hands and tied him to his backpack. And then we took him out of the area because it was a new area. We weren't sure what's happening in the area. And he stayed with us for a day or two. So I had to take him out of the area, and then they sent an Alohit and they picked him up. And I'm not sure what happened to him, but yeah, he definitely wasn't killed. He probably was dropped off somewhere on the border again.
But once he realized this, once he realized you're not really going to harm him, did he become more cooperative, or was he still treated as a prisoner?
Yeah, I think Gert even gave him some of his rat packs to eat. We gave him water. So he relaxed, completely relaxed. But when he saw us, he just wet himself. Now you can think yourself, you're not awake, and you're right in front of you, soldiers that you know is not your own soldiers. But coming back walking, so we would do a dog leg split up in body pairs. You would select the biggest tree that you can get, and you put your rucksack flat on the ground next to the trees, and you will lie then behind your rucksack, looking past the tree. Then after about 45 minutes, we will roll out the wires, put the claymores, and then, but every time before you walk out, you will show the rest of the team you're going out, because the bush is so thick, they could just easily identify or misidentify you as enemy. So you can't just say, okay, here I go, and roll out your claymore. The rest of the team must know you're going to walk out now. So that everything was very organized, no talking. Comms were, I would take out a single 30 and then you have to get the antenna as high as possible, and normally more or less a bearing facing back to where HQ is supposed to be in Rhodesia. And then I would start typing Morse code first, just from the sheet, the coded sheet, and then they would start asking questions. Then I would start typing extra Morse codes to them. So from their side, they were also sending Morse codes. So there was no talking, not even from HQ's side. So you then have to listen very carefully. And it was always a slip early in the morning when the western or the northern part of Mozambique, there's a lot of humidity. And then you pick up the Morse key, and with the moisture in your air, it touches before you can even start sending your codes. So yeah, that was always a battle early in the morning. So comms were early in the morning and late in the afternoon. Normally we wouldn't do our comms from where we're going to lie up the night, because you are moving too much around. So we will do comms and then move again to the next spot. And that's where we will sleep for the night. And then early in the morning, you will wake up at about 4:30, 5, cover yourself in black is beautiful again. And then we will listen quietly if we hear anything, because that's what saves us, listening, what's happening around us. Why is the birds all of a sudden quiet? Why is that bird all of a sudden making that noise? Then you know there is somebody in the area. So just by listening to nature, you would know what's going on around you. Okay, so that then
I just want to ask you one thing. I know you have a picture of your rucksack, your burden, as the British Army calls it. Perhaps we can just put in. I'm just making a note to myself. We'll put in a picture here of what that rucksack actually looks like.
Yeah.
Because it was not the standard South African Army equipment at all. It looked completely different.
Yeah, it was H-frame type, and then it was reinforced for parachuting, and then you would see at the back of the I'm going to take a photo from the front and the back. You would see there's two, like what we call it, eyelets, where that is where your rope that attach your rucksack to your body. So parachute.
When you drop it with a parachute.
Yeah, it's a zigzag on top of your rucksack, and that's about 20 foot. So I'm a little bit off the point, but if you jump and you release the snap hooks, then it drops about 20 feet. And now you can think yourself, it's 40, 50 kilograms, and you wait for that. Yeah, it really gives you a shock.
Yeah, and then of course when you can't see because you're jumping at night, and as you explained in the previous ones, you have to listen once again. You listen to the guys going through the trees, very grateful for the trees according to you, legs together, and then you hear your rucksack hitting the ground, and you hit it right afterwards.
Yeah, so you've got no idea what's waiting at the bottom. So if you're fortunate, you will hit a tree, and if you're fortunate, it's not a big tree. You don't want to get stuck up there high in the tree. And your rucksack goes that split second before you. So if maybe a break a branch or two, and then you hit the deck. Fortunately, I never fell on top of my rucksack, so it was always one trip. I'm not sure. It must be in front of the grace from above. I didn't release my rucksack. We were a little bit lower. I think we were below 800 feet. Pitch dark, and I didn't release it at all, which is not a good idea. To hit the ground with that still on your leg in front of you, not at the back. And I went, there was a slight wind, and that I realized afterwards. I went over a tree. So what would have happened is my rucksack would have caught the tree, and I would have whiplashed across and hit the other side, probably with my head first. Yeah, and it didn't carry steel helmet. It was like a soft, padded thing that you had on. It's not a helmet. It was more like the material you get in a couch. That nice foam. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. I'm sorry I distracted you so much, but it is interesting to me. Right, so
Yeah.
we're back. I think we're back now where that fellow who I thought was actually an Englishman was not an Englishman. We took over on your patrol, and I know you walked into another one elephant ambush afterwards.
Yeah, so since the death of Cocky, they picked us up a month later, and we were taken back to Buffalo Ranch, and there we stayed for, I think, 4 days. Getting your feet in a walking condition again, because the tacky boots, because especially if it's raining, your feet start getting soggy, and it was butter skimmel on your feet, between your toes, and so you have to get.
I can't think of a name now myself, but I think we know what we mean. It's like trench foot, where you have something growing, between the toes, and it removes the flesh actually.
Yeah, because that tacky boots, there was not any breathing. It was like if it's wet, it stays wet, and if you walk in early in the morning, it's wet, so it's always wet. So your feet never completely dry, and you would have 2 sets of clothes, and maybe two pair of socks. Some of the guys wear underpants. I never wear underpants. I mean, it was just too unhealthy. And then you will have a t-shirt. So 2 pants, 2 shirts, and a t-shirt, and 2 pair of socks. And normally we deployed for about a month at a time. The first operation longer. We were deployed longer. In total, I think we were there more than a year. But we will come to that. So now we're back at Uitske. We prepared again. Then we prepared as an 8-man team again. And then same scenario, last light, get into the Dakota, and off we go. This time we weren't so fortunate. A red light came on. We were already standing ready to go. The first guy was already in the door. I was second. And then all of a sudden, the enemy picked up the Dakota. The Dakota were using the railway line as navigation. You can think for yourself, it's just one flat bush. There's no high ground, nothing as a navigation point. So the railway track was a good navigation point for them. And then trying to avoid the anti-aircraft, because what happened is on the railway, they had mobile anti-aircraft, which they would push up and down on the railway track. And they picked up the Dakota. You can just think it's last light. If you look up, you can see the plane. I can't remember which height they were flying. I think higher than the height we were supposed to jump. No. They were already on about 900, 800 feet because we were ready to jump. So they were low. So the Dakota banked completely, and we start falling around in the plane. And what I didn't know is my jettison device, which tied the rucksack, came loose. Okay, and then about 10 minutes later, they stabilized again, and they said, okay, back in line, red light on, green light on, and there we go. And then as I released my rucksack, I waited for that jet feeling, and nothing happened. And I looked down and I see it's gone. It was spiraling, gone. Of course, I lost it within a couple of meters, couldn't see it anymore. The other guys was long on the ground. I was still hanging in the air. It just shows you the effect of that rucksack, how it pulls you down to the earth much quicker. So I hit the ground, luckily close to the other guys. And Dave Davis injured his ankle, so he couldn't walk. So we lined up there for a day, moved a little bit away from the landing zone, and we evacuated Dave. So I took, for that day or two, I left from the other guys' rat bags, from the one body pair to the other body pair. And then I took over Dave's rucksack. Luckily, I had a chest beaming and a kidney pouches, so I just took over his rucksack. And luckily, I wasn't in a signaler then as well. I had the RPD, light machine gun. They took him out, and yeah, we carried on doing the same thing, lying ambushes. One specific ambush we lied was right next to the railway track, and we heard this weird noise, something coming down the railway, and it's there is probably a specific name for it. You pump it like this, and then they start moving. Two guys either side, and there was three guys sitting on a small platform. And unfortunately for them, they came right in front of our killing zone. So the moment we start firing, they go into high-speed motion pumping this. But unfortunately, they didn't get it. It's all of them are soldiers. So they thought they could get away from us by going on the railway track. And then we moved further downwards. We laid, it's a TM, we call it a cheese mine. It looked like a cheesecake, exactly. It wasn't very good quality mines. It had the detonator that you have to screw in. So normally what happened if one guy, and it's always me, you were not always fortunate that the ground was soft, so you had to hit it with your Puma Bowie and anything that you can get. And then you would have two stopper groups, one about 200 meters up the road and another team down the road, 200 meters. So they the early warning. And then you will have one guy very close to you. So he will listen to the radio. We had HF radios, which you can talk to ground to air, but you can also talk to the other guys in the team. So he would listen from the early morning groups if there's anybody coming. And then you would cover up the mine and we go again to the next. So we would put a couple of mines in the road, but quite far apart, like 4 or 5 k's apart. And then one morning we were lying in ambush close to the railway, and they sent a patrol down the road. But I think we were a little bit too close to the road. Myself and Jax Jacobs, we were lying at the back. All the other guys were facing the front, facing the road. We were looking towards the back of the road. And the next moment, they initiated the contact. They let the guys walk completely into the whole group's line of fire. And the guys opened fire. And one guy, definitely not by planning or training, broke through the ambush. And we looked around, myself and Jakes, and we saw the guy coming, sprinting directly to us. And all I can remember was this big eyes. And when he saw us, he threw us with his AK. Fortunately, he went past us. I mean, he ran like an ostrich. He hit the ground every 4 meters. We even put off the claymore, but I think he outrun the ball bearings.
Well, it just was his day.
Yeah, he's probably still running.
Okay, I just want to, before you carry on, just want to recap something. That Dakota, the C-47, as I think the US people call it, that thing started banking because it was fireable. You were flying over, you were standing there in the door, and of course, it seems to me that this artillery, this 23 millimeters, probably picked it up. And that's why that pilot made a very, very severe bank.
Yeah. Yeah, you could, we could actually, because I was standing the second guy from the front in the dawn, of course, on your right, you can see these small windows.
Yes.
So we could actually see the traces as they come from the railway line coming towards us. And you can
That's a
actually
scary
hear.
sight. It's a beautiful sight, but
Yeah.
a scary one. I also just want to be sure here, we've been talking about the big TR-48 radio, which you had to carry, being the youngest and the newest. Very good radio, actually. It worked well. But it seems to me that's the one you use the Morse code on when you contacted your headquarters. But besides that, you also had other radios. You had the smaller one, which you could speak to each other as well as to the air.
Yeah, we had a smaller handheld radio, which we could speak. Each car had one. So we could speak in the team and from ground to air as well.
Okay, but that was not done in Morse code, I suppose, where you could use your voice.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because it's also it's limited range. I'm not sure. Probably 7K.
Yes, it's line of sight. It doesn't go very far. It's not supposed to. But I don't suppose that was used often, because mostly you people would actually see each other. It's only when you were planting your landmine and you had your early warning groups out that they could have used it if something happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you initiate the contact, who would shoot first? Let's say there's this ambush.
Normally the team leader.
Okay, so when the team leader starts shooting, everybody opens up.
Everybody opens. Yeah. So, but they were very, very close to us. I think our ambush were a little bit too close to the dirt road. It's a double track. And then what we didn't realize, we were very close to an army base, because the next thing, of course, the army heard the contact, and that guy that was still running probably first stopped there. And he breathed. He took a deep breath.
Yeah, ran out of breath probably. He was running. I was feeling it must have been an amazing sight if you're still laughing 42 years later. Well, we wish him well. We wish him all the happiness in the world. Yeah, it was his lucky day.
It was his day. He had the war story to tell afterwards.
Well, yeah, and he lost his rifle. Well, that's going to take some explaining.
And it was, we didn't know there was a big army base there, a couple of hundred guys, and they opened up with mortars on us because they could clearly hear from where the contact was initiated, and it was all hell broke loose. So we packed up and we left at a hell of a speed. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to say, okay, now that we were deployed for a month and we go back and then we come out. What I will do, I'll tell the operations, it didn't happen all in that specific deployment. It happened maybe in the next deployment or the third or the fourth deployment. So then we were out and we came back again, this time also back to the railway line. And we were two teams together. And I can't remember, I think we were looking for that enemy base again. So we were about 16 guys in total. So we split the two teams. Our team stayed behind. I think it was Willie Ward again, was the team leader. And the other team walked down, no, this is nightfall. Walked down the railway line and they took a break, but unfortunate for them, they took the break right in the middle of the ambush where the enemy were lying. I'm not sure, the enemy, probably they had night sight because they picked our guys up and we were lying about, I would say, 2Ks from there. And the next moment, the enemy opened up fire. So what we had now, we were looking down the railway. We were south of the actual ambush. And you could see when they opened fire, the typical area of firing at night, they were firing about at 45 degrees. So you could see the traces. They liked the traces. Were completely above our guys at an angle like that. And here and there you could see some of them were dropping. And our guys completely scattered, the 8 of them. And early the next morning, they sent up a Telstar so that they can communicate with all the guys. Now all the guys are scattered. They weren't together anymore. And they told us 2 guys were missing. We have to go sweep the area. And we went and we walked line abreast, the 8 of us. And we could hear them busy with unpacking the guys' rucksacks. You can hear them talking. So we were about 1 or 2 minutes away from walking into a heavy fight because there were quite a few hundred of them there. You could hear by the noises and the vehicles. And just before we hit the contact, HQ let us know, okay, they found everybody. And we made the U-turn and we went into a sandalwood bush that was very close to us. We walked about 500 meters into the bush. And now we faced back to where the ambush area we were. And the next moment we saw them coming. Also very quiet, alert, and they walked on our track. And just before they hit the sandalwood bush, they turned away. They decided they would walk around and catch us on the other side. And I stopped counting them as they go past. But very alert, and you can see they were ready to fight. Weapons ready. And then we called in a Hunter strike. Hunter was the Rhodesian fighter plane. So we could see them more or less where they were walking. And about 10 minutes later, because they already had the Hunter in the air with the Telstar, I would say about 5-10 minutes later, we heard the strike that came in. But the Hunter was so close to us that the links between the rounds were dropping around us. And that showed how close these guys were next to us. So the Hunter actually did pick them up. And I think they always body pair, the Hunters as well. They would never fly only one guy. And that gave us the opportunity to get away. There was, I think, another airstrike on them. And we left the area. We got completely out of the area as soon as possible. Okay, now we were airlifted back, about I think 2 weeks after that, back in Buffalo Ranch. And then they said, we need to prepare for a base attack with the SAS guys. I can't remember how they deployed. We, of course, parachute again, but this time without a rucksack. And they told us it's going to be at a lower altitude, probably about 700, 600, I'm not sure, because they want us to hit the ground as quickly as possible. We were two Dakotas. Yes, it must have been more. They also jumped in, the SAS guys. SAS and Salute Scouts guys. So it was SAS, one recce, and Salute Scouts. All of us to attack this base, the one that I identified. And we jumped in. We were on target. So lined up, and then we start moving down. It was like a slope down, and they told us to hang on. We were still waiting for the alloys. The alloys would be the gunships. Alouette 2, 3, I can't remember which range it was. And I was sitting next to Mac van der Merwe, big stocky guy. And he said, Israel, okay, before, of course he talked in Afrikaans. before we start, let me give you something. And he took out a small container, and it was brandy. So we each had a sip of brandy, and now we were ready. And they showed us stand up forward, and then we start. And we were 50 meters moving down that slope, and then the actual firefight started. They were down in trenches, and we were walking down towards them. And we hit the first trenches, and there were a couple of guys firing back at us. I remember there was a colored guy directing their fire. And we hit the deck, but Mac was still standing up behind a tree, but he was looking another way. He wasn't looking down to that where the colored guy was standing. And the colored guy shot him right through the neck, and he fell, very close to me. And then we start sweeping down, and they told us to stop. And then they first had the Allo gunships come in right above us, firing into the trenches. So from the top, it was easier for them to get the guys, hit the guys. So we would then just fire, and we did fire a movement through the trenches, right through the base. And that's where we saw our tactics and the Rhodesian tactics are different. We did fire movement, and then we saw, but there is some bullets hitting the ground here close to us. So they would stay at the back. They didn't do fire movement. So they just stayed behind like stopper groups while we were sweeping the trenches, going right through it. Yes, that was, yes, what happened there. One guy, Didis, he became a small team leader, small team operator. He got caught in a tree, and he missed the whole base attack. So we went back, and we still find him hanging down high up in the tree. Eventually we got it down. I can't remember how. So that was our first base attack.
I have a few questions, if we can, before we forget them. Is it possible that you can just explain to the listeners here what is Telstar?
Telstar.
In South African Army, yes. What do you mean when you talk about Telstar?
Yeah, Telstar is a small plane. It's either for reconnaissance or it's used in a base attack. It will be hanging in the air, and it will give feedback to the commander of the assault group what is happening. And in our case, it was to find all the guys that's on the ground, because remember, there's only one guy with the HF radio. All the other guys got VHF radios. So the only way to talk to them is to get a plane up there. So it's either used for
airborne link. It's for airborne command and control. They just establish radio links between the people.
Yeah. And so on South African side, they were called the Bosbok and a couple of other names. So it's a very small 2-seater plane that will hang in the air and can even give fire control as well. But for us, it was basically for escape and evasion, to get everybody together again. Yeah.
Okay, could I ask you, there's our group who got ambushed, who sat down right in the middle of the death zone. They scattered. Would this be trained? Is this your standard operational procedure to scatter in such circumstances?
That specific, they know they were in the killing ground. So they realized they must get as quickly as possible out of that killing ground. And of course, it was a massive superior force lying on the other side of the railway track, slightly on a high ground. So it was a perfect killing area. Fortunately for our guys, they fired too high. So all of them scattered. They came together the next day. And I think they did a count of equipment. Some of the guys were out of their rucksacks. 2 or 3 guys. So I'm not sure how they did it. I know they weren't airlifted out. They stayed on.
So okay, so they carried on. They just regrouped and said, okay, we'll have to share a bit. And that to me is amazing. It's amazing to me how you people always just carry on. It's a military doctrine which is unknown in the rest of the world, as far as I'm concerned. But now I want to ask you perhaps a bit of a low question, but what do you think of the Royal Rhodesian Air Force, which of course became a Rhodesian Air Force later? Because you worked with them a lot.
Yeah, they were good. And if they come in for a strike, they will come in low. So they weren't afraid to attack. And specifically the LOHs, the gunships, I was very impressed with them. While we were lying just before we carried on with the attack, is that they would come in one after the other, firing into the trenches, because we give them an indication exactly the distance, and they could pick up the trenches. So they keep on firing into the trenches, and that gave us opportunity to start moving forward again.
Yeah, they were excellent pilots. I've heard very, very good things of them. Of actually, of all the air forces involved, I've heard very good things of the South African Air Force as well. Really top rated. You people never had any body armor on you, and it was on them.
No, it was too heavy. Not a helmet. I saw 1 or 2 of the Rhodesian guys that wear helmets in the base attack, but from our side, never. No flak jackets, body armor, nothing. I just want to explain again with the actual jump, is that I remember there were an airstrike before we actually went in, and you could, just before we were standing ready to jump, we could look out of the windows, and you could see activity there. Everything is burning, the bushes, and I remember it was very low. And you don't have a rucksack, so they decided you're lighter, so we can drop you lower. And I think it must have been about 600 feet. So you hit the ground.
That's very low. But that must have been one of a few combat drops you made actually in daytime.
Yeah. Every time it was the 2 times we had a base attack. That was daytime. We didn't have any casualties there. It was only MAC. Then we went right through the enemy base, and then they realized there's another enemy base not very far from there. So they actually picked us up by Allos, and they dropped us off closer to that side. But now we were in a hornet's nest, because there were armored vehicles, there were tanks, which we didn't know, which they didn't know. So we were, between us and the SAS guys, we had, I think, 1 RPG, and it was the one, you can fold it up, and 1 RPG with probably about 4 or 5 RPG bombs. And they knew that we were in the area, so we were lying, I would say, about 400 meters, 300 meters from the road. And then we heard this noise from a tank, like that. You don't have this, like seeing a shark in the water. You know it's a shark. A tank, you know it's a tank, just by the noise. And then we heard him stop. And the next thing, they start firing at us. Yeah, there's an unbelievable noise that round when it came over your head. So they were firing randomly where they know we were. They weren't that much out of line where we were, but they were much too high. And I remember me and Paul Courtney were lying behind a small tree. And now we start pushing each other. Now you lying behind the tree. No, you lying behind me. I mean, the tree was so small. I mean, he's not going to even stop around. It was just psychological that it's a tree in front of us.
So what do you do when
And
a tank starts hunting you? I mean, you can't really defend yourself.
they were too afraid to really, they could have approached with infantry and we would have been highly in trouble. They stayed there firing randomly all over. Again, the hunter came in, the hunter took out one of the tanks, but there were more than one. There were a couple of them. But now the bush were burning and there was a lot of smoke and dust, and it was nearly, it was about half an hour before last light. We decided we had to get out of the area. And we walked single file. And I remember the next thing we saw the tanks and other vehicles. They were parked in a semicircle there. So we walked actually past the vehicles. I'm not sure where they were, but it was getting dark. And of course, it was all the smoke from the bushfire. So we sneaked through them, we sneaked out, and we gone. So yeah, so fortunately for us, because I think the next day they built up courage and they start sweeping the whole area because they thought we still them. And yeah, we were out of the area. Yeah, so that was the two base attacks, one after the other, that happened.
There was a later one which we'll discuss in a further episode with a green leader raid. That happened a little bit later. If you wish to talk about that one, you can do so now.
Yeah, that was the Rhodesian intelligence picked up there was going to be a massive gathering of recruits. And they plan to deploy from Zambia into Rhodesia to attack. I'm not sure, quite on a big scale. And so we prepared to be part of the attack. And I remember there was that famous voice recording from where the pilots, one pilot talked to the other pilot, Green Leader 1, Green Leader 2, and they flew over the Zambian airport where there were probably MiG-17s. I don't think it was MiG-21s, not yet. And they spoke to the ground control and told him, listen, our war is against the dissidents, not against the Zambian army. But if you take off, we will shoot your planes down. And the guy from the ground actually responded. Somewhere I still have that recording.
Yes, it's all over the internet. I'm sure we can make I can put it in. It will definitely be in the book.
Okay, let me try and get the speed up.
Hey, what? Stop it.
This is Soccer Tower. This is Green Leader. How do you read? This is a message for the station commander at Mumba from the Rhodesian Air Force. We are attacking the terrorist base at Westlands Farm at this time. This attack is against Rhodesian dissidents and not against Zambia. Rhodesia, Zambian. Roger, thanks. Cheers.
What is interesting to me, though, is this attack took place because they shot down 2 civilian airliners and they killed the people who survived. That's the background to it. A lot of the people in the West doesn't even know about it, or they don't want to know about it, or more to the point. But it was, I think, vice counts of a Rhodesian air, like a civilian air line. It was not military. They shot them down. It's a sad thing. It had to do with the way that the missiles picked up these aircraft. The technology was there in South Africa to defeat it. And for some reason, the Rhodesians didn't implement it, which is what I know about it. And then came the famous Green Leader raid, where about the entire SAS attacked this base. There were a lot of what we call terrorists, of course, there. What I didn't know was that the South Africans were also involved. I was quite fascinated when you told me about that. So how did that happen? I know we used the entire Air Force almost. We were jumping from
I remember in the actual voice clip, I had one pilot talking to the other one just after the airstrike, and he said something, I can't remember his exact words. Did you see that? Because he struck into where they were lying up, and the first strike, I think they started running, and the second guy actually came and he killed them. I'm not sure what kind of bombs, probably 500 pounders they dropped. And of course I'm not sure if the hunters had a capacity like a 20 mil or a 30 mil. I doubt it. Oh, I think it was rockets.
No, I think
rockets
they had 4 of them. They had 4 20 mils. Well, it was actually a good aircraft. It's a British thing. It's not Italian. It's got nothing to do with the Apollo. I'll put a picture again here for Hunter. The Hunter pilots really loved that aircraft. They said it was very, very good. Yeah,
they and what they did, they slaughtered them, and they spoke to one of the terrorist commanders afterwards, and they said they were devastated. So what they did with these recruits, they took the recruits immediately away, so they couldn't see all the dead bodies there. And they would just pack up and leave back into the bushes if they would see all the own guys killed there. So they said what they did, they immediately took them out of the area. And they...
So what happened to the South African contingent? What's with the South African guys there? What happened to them? Because you would still have been under the radar. You would be there as Rhodesian SAS, actually.
Yeah. And I think with that deployment, we were actually all carrying the Rhodesian camouflage, because it wasn't only us, it was again the RLI, and I think they were RLI, Rhodesian Light Infantry as well. So it was a massive attack, but these guys just scattered, and that commander told one of Rhodesians that if there was just one more bomb, one more shot, they would have completely lost it and dispersed completely, and everybody would have run away. So they sneaked out at night and they were gone. But a lot of them were killed, mostly by airstrikes. So we didn't actually have contact with them. They just took the gap and left everything behind. I mean, weapons. And a lot of them, I think, some of the recruits decided, no, this is not for them. This is not
this is interesting that you mentioned weapons, because as I'm stuck in Switzerland for now, not for long, we hope. But many people don't realize that these people were not actually refugees. These were trained military people. They got the arms and the equipment from Russia and China. The same rifles as what you people were using, they were an army. So they were a legitimate target, despite what people tried to say afterwards.
Yeah, and there was another attack by the Rhodesians, combined RLA, SAS, Salute Scouts, and I can't remember the name. I think it was Pungwe. It was a military base, also a lot of recruit. That's where they recruit, and I believe there was about 400 or 500 of them next to a river where they were camping, and the Rhodesians identified the actual area that was situated in. And so they sent in vehicles that looked like supply trucks, because these guys were without food for a day or two. So they were waiting for this convoy. And the guys told me as they went in, the commander of that base came out. So they drove right into the base, and they had canvases rolled. It was the frame on the back of the truck, and canvases covered them, and they were standing there. So when they drove into the base, they left the canvases, and all these guys stormed toward the trucks. They were ready to get their food. And when they're right next to the trucks, the guys opened fire. And he said it was a massacre. They couldn't get away. And I believe there was a river as well there somewhere. Some of the guys drowned in the river. And then afterwards, there was a lot of bivvies built out of grass. 2-3 guys could stay in a bivvy. So the Rhodesians would light up all these bivvies, and all of a sudden, these guys would pop out of the bivvies again. So that was a massive success for them as well.
Well, I remember reading about it, some of the books which were written. And I believe a guy, a Rhodesian standing there, looked like a black man because he had, total black as beauty on him, which is like a cream. I suppose when you just cover your face, you look totally black. But sadly, he had blue eyes. And so the closer these guys came, the more I was wondering about this fellow with his blue eyes. How would you rate a Rhodesian fighting man, Isvia? I mean, you're a professional soldier. You worked with them quite extensively in later years. We'll get to that. You had combined raids on terrorist nests inside cities, counter-terrorism. We will talk about that in a later episode. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
But how would you rate the Rhodesian soldier? What do you think of him?
They were classified as the best bush warfare soldiers, but I think we took the title. But they were excellent soldiers. Selous Scouts were slightly different. They would operate like 5 reconnaissance regiments, more pseudo operations, infiltrating small teams. I think they also had black soldiers working with them. But it was only in the base attacks that we really worked together. I think the idea of deploying South Africans is that the Rhodesian guys could be active in other areas, more internal, protecting the farms and doing follow-up or operations where they get enemy tracks. But yeah, they were good guys, and a lot of them joined us afterwards when Rhodesia became Zimbabwe. Quite a lot, most of them came over to us in Durban and be part of. I think they became 3 Recce. Yeah, Selous Scouts, SAS, they came with their families over to Durban.
Yes, it's one of the only times in the world actually where the entire Special Forces regiment was basically moved from one army to another army. The experiment didn't work out well, but it was well meant. They were trying to get the skills of these guys in. And some of them stayed on, of course. Some of them became famous South African Special Forces people. Okay, but I have a question here. If you are now dropped on a base attack and the base attack is over, what happens then? How do you get withdrawn? Because you don't have all your kit with you. You drop there as a fighting man. And this we also have to remember the failed attack of Ioki. I just can't say that name. Perhaps you can just tell us quickly about that for somebody who didn't listen to the first ones. Which I say is a failure. It wasn't a military failure, but for Special Forces, it was a black day. It must have been in your head. I mean, when you attack these bases.
Are you talking about Iheki now? Or
yes, because that only happened a year or 2 before these base attacks. And once again, now you've got Special Forces doing what infantry and mechanized troops should be doing, as well as armor. that is not the Special Forces' job to attack the base.
Yeah, ironically, we were never tried to do base attacks. So we were on a deep end in Mozambique, being part of doing a base attack, and it actually, fortunately for us, went well. We had the gunships, which is just alloys, and I think it was twin LMGs that they were firing on. There could have been one that had a 20 mil on. So, but that gave us a little bit of advantage. If you compare it to where our guys did a base attack with no support, totally outnumbered, and where the 7 guys were killed with anti-aircraft weapons firing on them, 12.7, 14.5. So we were fortunate that they didn't have heavy caliber weapons. The light machine guns, yes, but yeah, I think the swift way we attacked the base is that we totally surprised them. They didn't expect us, yeah.
But so after the attack, how did you get out?
I think we walked quite a distance. The same with the SAS guys and Salute guys. We had to walk quite a distance, and I can't think that they would be able to lift everybody by choppers because they only had LOHs. They didn't have Pumas at all. Later on, they got the American
Huey,
yeah. But
yes, we'll talk about the Hueys because I recall there was a bridge which got destroyed, but that we'll talk about in another episode.
Yeah, so I think we must have, most probably they airlifted some of us, and we walked quite a distance out of the area. I think eventually everybody was airlifted because it was too deep to send any vehicles to come fetch you. It was too risky either to drive all that way. So we probably were airlifted over a couple of days. Be out of the area.
That is not the attack where the South African Puma got shot down.
Sorry, Chris?
Was that the same attack where the South African Puma got shot down, or did that happen in a later stage?
That was another one. We can actually talk about that one now. We were deployed again. This time we were about three teams together. So we were about 24, 25 guys. And we were in an area where there was a lot of activity. And waiting, they did a attack on, I have to get the name from the guys. It was a small town, but it was reinforced. It was a military, actually more military base than a civilian place to stay. And we were on standby. So I think it was ROI, Rhodesian Light Infantry, Salute Guards, SAS. So they were flew in by Puma helicopters. And I'm not sure what went wrong. In the one chopper, there were the engineer team with a lot of explosive to blow up certain things there. And I think that the front Puma overtook a spot where he was supposed to land, and he banged into the air. And the one behind him sort of hang in the air, avoiding collision with, the one in front. And as he was in the air, unfortunately for them, there was a lot of enemy right beneath them. And a guy with an RPG shot right into the Puma. And it disintegrated. That bodies were never found. And I read the story afterwards. The guys did go there at the area, and they were all buried by the locals that were there. And each one had a tombstone or just a cross on the graves, and there was like a fence around them. So they were buried there. The bodies were never returned back to Rhodesia, including, of course, the pilot and the co-pilot from South Africa.
Yes, because
Yeah, so,
the Rhodesians didn't have Pumas. If there's a Puma helicopter involved, it had to be the South African Air Force
yeah.
flying there. Okay,
And
now
meanwhile, yeah, we were lining up, and they decided they're not going to drop us in there. They're just going to have more trouble getting everybody out there, because it was like a hornet's nest. It was a reinforced, mechanized place. It wasn't just infantry. But we hit a contact guy sweeping the area, and we did that attack a typical fire movement. Which, fortunate for us, it was a little bit of a grassland, so perfect for fire and movement, but no place to hide for them and for us. And we killed, there we did a body count. I think we killed about 10 or 12 of them. Typical fire movement, one guy fire and the next guy would go past. We swept right through the area. And that ended simultaneously with they withdraw us, and they withdrew the SAS guys that did the base attack, and the RLI guys took them out of the area completely. So that was a blow for the Rhodesian Defence Force, losing a whole engineer team. I think there were 10 guys in the chopper with the pilot and co-pilot.
yeah, it's sad. That was right at the end of the Rhodesian Bush War.
Yeah.
Which at that stage they had some trouble there, because they simply didn't have the manpower. And they were being attacked from all three sides. I mean, Rhodesia, if you don't know where it is, go look on a map. But it is surrounded. You know, you've got Mozambique, Zambia, and Botswana. And the terrorists were coming in from all sides. And while they could, when they met them, they killed them, and they did their best. They were just being overwhelmed. Especially when South Africa withdrew its support. At one stage, you had the police. You know, the South African police were doing counterinsurgency work quite well. That's where we learned. But then, as you one showed me those top secret papers, you cannot mix the police with the army. It's a different type of people that have different views on life, and there's a disciplinary problem between the two groups.
Yes, I was thinking now of an incident, but it's not related to what we're talking about, is where we went through the minefield. Yeah, because the Rhodesians laid a minefield between the northern border of Mozambique and Rhodesia, and it was, I don't know how many kilometers that minefield was, and it was consists out of POMZs. POMZ is an anti-personnel mine. It's above the ground, looks like a pineapple on a stick. There were plowshare anti-personnel mines. It looks like a plowshare with the actual detonator in the inside of the mine, and have a tripwire across to the other side. And it had anti-tension. So what these guys did, the terrorists, they would walk past them and then from the back push them down. But it works on a tension release, so that detonate them as well. And then, of course, anti-personnel mines. That is basically, that covered that whole minefield. So we had to go through the minefield, and there were a scout that took us through the minefield. And it was literally walking in the steps from the guy in front of you. So as you pick up his feet, yours will be on the same track there. And you would see on your left and right these plowshare or POMZ tripwires right around you. And then we would actually sleep up one night, and you could hear, as the animals came into the minefield, you could hear them going off all over. And the next day, because I think it took us the better part of a day to get through the whole minefield. And it's not just, there you go. You have to walk. One guy pick up his foot, you put your foot there. So there could be anti-personnel mines as well.
Yeah, so that sounds like a nightmare scenario. I know that the Rhodesians, because they had such limited manpower, had extensive landmine fields, some of the biggest in the world. But the concept didn't work, because if you have a landmine field and you don't cover it with infantry,
it's
not going to work well. The landmines will actually be stolen and used against you. But why were you going through that landmine? I forgot to ask you, why. What were you doing?
They wanted us to. They were expecting infiltrations in that area, so they wanted us to patrol and see if we pick up any tracks of guys trying to get through the minefield. Of course, there was a lot of them killed at trying to get through the minefield, but you couldn't go into the minefield to search what's going on there. So we did patrols in front of the minefield, northwest, mostly northwest, covering the border side. I was just thinking of another airstrike we brought in. Also, I know we had a massive contact, and we called in a vampire. I don't know if you know that plane.
Yes.
It works on a push and pull.
Yeah,
it's got a fixed tail. Say again, Chris?
It's actually made of wood. It's one of the first jets which we had after the war. It's an old thing, but it's well armed. I think it had 420mm cannon.
Yeah.
Vampire. I'll put a picture for people here to look at it.
Because it's so slow, it's also very accurate. I know they had, I think, a heavy caliber gun and rocket pods, and when they fire, it looks like it's been hit. It's just smoke, and you hear the guys on the other side, the enemy, starting yelling and celebrating, and the next thing, these rockets arrive between them. They thought they shot the thing down, but it just make a hell of a smoke when it started.
Yeah, that must have been quite a surprise. But we're still in Mozambique, and it doesn't really matter if, if it's a little bit out of time sequence. I mean, we did dedicating this episode and a one before, basically on Rhodesia as well as on Mozambique. Is there anything else which happened in Mozambique which you can think about, which we might share with
Not really.
I remember one, if I can, that you did say when you arrived there, you didn't really see civilians, and of course you couldn't speak English that well. So I remember one of you asked for free cold drinks or something.
Charles Volstorm, also a Namibian guy. We drive with trucks towards Buffalo Ranch, and we stopped at a small place to buy hamburgers. And Charles, typical Namibian accent, I want free hamburgers. And the lady said, no, you have to pay for it. He said, no, free. Eventually, he used his fingers.
On free.
Yeah,
they were wonderful people, these Rhodesians. It's a pity what South Africa did to it. But that's a subject of another thing. So
and then I remember there was one incident with the ROI, an ROI patrol and a Rhodesian SAS patrol walking to each other, not very far from where our base camp was. So they were patrolling the area around where our base camp was. And we heard this firefight. Luckily, nobody was killed, but the SAS guys hit both the scouts, two black guys, RLI guys. And our doctor came in, and immediately, there was always a doctor with us deployed. Can't remember which doctor it was. And they said that they're looking for, we must come, at least 5 or 6 or 7 of us donate blood. So I'm not sure how they did it. Of course, everybody knew, if you look at us on our sleeves, your blood group were indicated on your sleeve, and the same with them. So they would ask for O positive, we're O positive, because we can donate to everybody. And I was O positive. So myself and a couple of other guys, they immediately took our blood, and they had all the wounded guys there with us in our base, and then stabilized. Then fortunately nobody was killed. I'm not sure how they realized. I think the RLI guys realized, but the tactics from the SAS guys is not enemy tactics, it's own tactics, and then that's where they stopped the firefight. Luckily, fortunately.
Yeah, it must have been, I'm not sure, it could have been the RLI, because that was a white regiment only. We might have been the Rhodesian African Rifles, who were also paratroopers.
Yes, yeah. It wasn't
before
RLI.
somebody here gets clever with us.
Yeah, you're correct. It wasn't RLI. It was black soldiers. Yeah.
Yeah, they were very good. I think there is a picture of your 21st birthday. We're going to talk about that probably in the next episode. Where we can clearly see on your uniforms these numbers you're talking about. When I remember when I saw it the first time, I was asking you what on earth is on your uniform, because it looks like numbers and all sorts of things.
Yeah,
So you didn't have dog tags as such. I mean, you couldn't, because you were not there as a South African soldier.
Yeah, if you get caught there in an enemy uniform, enemy weapons, you're a spy, and there's only one route for a spy: is firing squad.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, so
because they might torture you to death before. I mean, it was cruel, really a cruel war. Were you ever?
There was no mercy.
Were you ever worried about such things, or being captured?
No, never. We were fortunate, always being outnumbered, is that they would attack, and if we hit them, we give them a blood nose. They would always withdraw, run away. A lot of time I remember one time they were running at such a pace, they run into a lot of cattle, and the cattle were running with them. So you could hear them, the cattle charging through the bush, charging through the bushes.
Well,
and then they would come again.
I have a certain admiration for them for keeping on coming back at you. I mean, I would not want, quite honestly, I would really not want to on a special forces team of any country, and especially not of South Africa, really not. Because unless you have armor and an air force on your side, there's going to be casualties. I mean, these guys are not going to surrender. They will fight.
Yeah, and they, especially if they collect your parachutes, which they a lot of times do, they know exactly how many guys you were. And after the second or third or fourth firefight, they will just double, triple their men, and they don't leave you. They will carry on. Ironically, they didn't really fire with mortars on us because they didn't know where we were. They could follow the track. They were very good tracking, and fortunately for us, and they become more clever. There were a couple of contacts they were quiet. They must have realized by the tracks that we're not that far ahead of them. And the one incident I heard, I think I did mention it, I heard the guy's barrel hitting a twig. Now you must just think how quiet you must be to hear that over a distance of 60, 70 meters. You'd hear that noise and you realize if you were there busy talking and chatting, they would have walked past us and hit us. So that was that's why our training was so excellent. And your hideout, you need to be quiet. Not even smoking. No smoking. That smoke you can pick up quite a distance away. And all your senses, your hearing, your smelling, your sight is just like it triples in capacity. I mean, you can smell a bushfire from the locals a couple of kilometers away. You can smell it drifting on the wind, and bark of a dog that you can. Fortunately, they didn't really have dogs. Fortunate for us, because the dogs pick you up easily. Yeah, so the drills have to be excellent, and you need to be camouflaged all the time. So you sweat the day when you take your first break, you cover up again. We're walking in temperatures of 40 degrees. The humidity is extremely high in the northern part of Mozambique.
I want to dispel a myth here. You answered it in the Afrikaans one, but of course many people who are listening here would not have listened to Afrikaans one. But let me say again, if you do understand Afrikaans, it's still worth your while to go and listen to it, because it's not quite the same. It's the same story, of course, but as our memories go back, we remember certain things and we forgot other things. We will use both to put it in a book to get a complete picture as far as possible. But you always jumped with green parachutes, because there used to be a rumor in Civilian Street that sometimes you would jump in white parachutes because a local would pick it up and make like a wedding dress or something of it, and then not report you to the police or to the army. Can you just confirm to me you never jumped in anything but green?
No, it was green, and it was the typical static line parachutes which you can't steer it for the obvious reason. Number one, you're only a couple of seconds in the air. Number two, you have to be as close as possible together at night. You jump at night. So if you disturb over a kilometer, you're not going to find the other guys. Very difficult to find. And it was only the green, like a green olive color. And then always reserve parachute, which I don't know why was the reason for that, because there's no way you could react that fast and use your reserve. I mean, you're that low, below 1,000 feet, pulled down by this heavy rucksack of 40, 50. If you add up all your equipment, close to 50.
Yes, so it's a bit unnecessary. I mean, the reserve it's not possible to cut away and then to pull the reserve. You'll be dead before you do that. So that parachute had to work every single time. Have you ever heard of a parachute not working, of a failure on a combat job?
No, so we must give a thumbs up for the ladies that packed it, because it was South African parachutes. It came with us when we flew up to Rhodesia. So it was ladies packing in Bloemfontein. So
you never packed your own parachute. You would receive a thing already packed and signed off.
Yeah, it would be good to speak to one of them and actually just tell them whether they did a very great job. So we never had.
Well, if one is listening here, or perhaps somebody here knows one of those packers, please, they can contact me and we will gladly bring them up and say to them, thank you. I know I've seen the pictures of them where they just have these long lines, looks like tables. And then they just fold these parachutes and that's a South African Army thing, as far as I know. You don't pack your own parachute. In fact, you receive it already packed. That's the difference between Space Knots and the South African Special Forces. You received it packed. Yeah,
it's only with your free fall parachute. You pack yourself.
Okay, that so for free fall, which is the square one, it's not a normal pumpkin as we call it. The square one you would pack yourself.
Yeah, so you make sure you pack it correctly.
Well, I'm sure that there's some kind of checks involved, and it's a serious matter. Any parachute jump actually is. I mean, I often look at these pictures of a guy sitting there singing, and they seem to play the fool around there. I've never seen that in my own life. Normally, the guys are quite quiet, and they're concentrating on their jump. They're working out the scenarios in their head of what can they do and not do, especially, I would say, with high altitude. They low platform jump. Yes, I think we covered it, and I think we can end this episode now. We are, like always, we are most grateful for you to speaking to us, and I want to say to those listening here, just look at that book cover behind me. That book's going to come out, and you will learn a lot more from that book than what we can possibly say to each other right here. If you have questions, you are very welcome to send it to me. I'll leave an email address here for you, but if you want to make a comment, we will look at it, and at a later stage we might answer you, but just let's keep it civil. And as I also say, we've learned since we made the Afrikaans ones. If you have a specific question, just tell us it at, say, at minute 57 or whatever. You said the following, and then it's easy for us to go back and to answer you. Otherwise, it's a problem. You know, you might be looking at this a year from now, or 2 years, or 6 months. I don't know. You're most welcome, but we don't have time to go back and listen to an entire 1.5 hour clip just to answer your one question. So just make it easy for us, please, and we will make it our duty to answer you as well. So thanks, Esbjørn. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. I think what I can use as a reference is maybe the photos, because we will try to combine photos related to the story. So if we specifically refer to that photo or the one at the bottom, we would know which
that's a good idea. That's very good. Because these videos we see as a legacy conversation. I said it in the first one. I'm not here to interrogate anybody. I'm not in court right now. I'm not here to do a cross-examination, but what we are hoping for is that when people down the line, even your own kids, if they look at this in a later stage, they will find not only you talking, they will also find the pictorial history, where we put in the pictures with a little bit of a description as we talk about it. So you're welcome to do that too. I think that's a good idea.
Great.
Well, then we'll say goodbye until next time.
Cheers.